I'm Cindy Littlejohn. I'm the author of Palmetto Pioneers, the series. And I thought I would go into the first book and pick out a recipe to cook for my family for Christmas. And I thought that the perfect recipe might be a strawberry cake. You see, I live in Florida, and strawberries are a winter. Here is an excerpt from Yankees in the Courthouse, page 348. One day, Mary rose early and worked on breakfast while Sarah got everyone to the table inside. 13-year-old Hattie shuttled food between the kitchen and dining room. Mary could hear the chatter, giggling, and raking of chairs on the floors inside. She was waiting for them to settle before joining. In her kitchen, though, she had also made one of her strawberry cakes with the last of her garden strawberries. She was putting on the finishing touches and would add strawberries for garnish later when 22-year-old Sarah walked into the kitchen. She was wearing her lavender Sunday go-to-meeting dress with its full skirt and boat neckline. Her skirts were less full than usual. Sarah kept her eyes on the fashions, and now women were wearing fewer petticoats and no hoops. The article in the semi-weekly Floridian stated that the wide hoops, once ubiquitous, had completely disappeared in New York and remained only among domestic servants. "Mama, I fixed the rip at its side, but it is so faded," Sarah said. Mary replied, "Sarah, honey, everyone's clothes have faded. It wouldn't be right if you wore something new to JJ's wedding. No one would understand since all of us have had to do with a lot less. It is a badge of honor to look worn and faded." Mary grinned and winked at her daughter. Sarah looked at her dress, then at her mother's. "I know. It is so boring, though, this pretense that everything is fine when it isn't." And she turned and walked through the dog trot toward the porch. Mary heard the big back door open and slam. So that's why I decided to do a strawberry cake, except I'm doing it at Christmas. I pulled together the ingredients for this strawberry cake. This is for the cake itself. Here's the ingredients for the strawberry reduction. And there's 32 ounces of strawberries in the reduction. And then this will be the buttercream. The first part of this recipe is making the reduction. You can blend all of the strawberries together in a blender, but I've got this little magic bullet, and so I did a little at a time. But it's 32 ounces of strawberries that have to be blended. I picked this recipe for this reason. That red coloring was probably all the red coloring she had in her cake. She didn't have food coloring at the grocery store like we do today. And so I did this one because she may have crushed the strawberries to add color to her cake. Remember, I said that I thought that Mary crushed her strawberries instead of putting them in the blender. Of course, she didn't have a blender. This is what they used to crush things, and I have one left over from something that I had to crush years ago. But I've used it for all kinds of things, even crushing baby aspirin back when people gave baby aspirin to their children. There were all kinds of reasons to have to crush something. By the way, this was my mother's kitchen. The last time it was remodeled was in 1968 upon the birth of her last baby, who was born almost 15 years after I was born. She designed this kitchen herself, and my father built it for her. My father was not a carpenter, but he was very good with his hands. This kitchen was very modern in 1968. It's part of a great room, a living area, And she put her sink in the middle of the room like this because she didn't want to turn her back on her visitors. The kitchen is made to surround the middle area where people can work and walk. This is what my kitchen looks like from outside of the work area. I apologize for the football game going in the background, but my husband has Alzheimer's disease, and this was the only way I could keep him occupied and out of my videos. So let's get started on that cake. Next, you add the puree to a boiler. Add the sugar and the lemon juice and the zest, and then you're going to cook it. You're going to cook it down so that some of the water comes out. It's going to get redder, and it's also becoming more flavorful as you cook some of the water out of the puree. Make sure you keep stirring it. It's important. You don't want it to stick on the bottom. And I actually had to turn mine down a little from medium low. Not a lot, but just a little. If it wants to burp out of the pot, just set a lid to the side and that'll take care of the problem. Now it is time to make the cake batter. I noticed that all her measurements are by ounces. If you look on your measuring cups, I use this type of measuring cup, you'll see that on the side it tells you how many cups to how many ounces, and that's what I ended up using. You add 3/4 cup of the reduction to the wet part of this, and I have already put together the wet part. It's all in the recipe. And then this is the dried part that I put together, and I went ahead and prepared my pans. So let's add the reduction to the wet part, all 3/4 cup. We still have some left for the next part, and I'll whisk this together. See, it's adding more color to the mixture. Next, we need a mixer for this part. This is where you put the butter and whip it together, and we're going to add the sugar and the egg whites, and then we're going to add the wet part interchangeably with the dry part in thirds until we get the mixture all mixed together. Like I said, it's all in the recipe, and I'm going to give you where to find that recipe in a moment. That's my cake batter, and next we add it to the pans. I have a problem. She calls for an 8.5-inch pan, and I have a 9.5-inch pan. So this cake is going to be flatter than probably what hers would look like, but I think it'll taste as well as good. And that means I have to change the cooking. It will cook faster. So let's go with the next step. I had a little trouble getting the cakes out of the pans, and I think it might be because the recipe just called for putting oil in the pans. I think it probably needed to be oiled and a little flour put in there. It makes cakes easier to come out of their pans. So it took me a little bit, but I finally got them out, and we're ready to frost. And as soon as the frosting is done, we'll get started. Now I'm making the frosting, and it's a buttercream frosting. It's not that hard to make, but that's because I have a mixer. I'm not sure Mary made a buttercream frosting. This is the recipe I used. It's from sugargeekshow.com. Fresh strawberry cake with strawberry buttercream recipe. It was easy to put together. There is plenty of frosting And I probably should have had more frosting between the layers, but there's a lot of frosting on top. And tomorrow I will add the strawberries for garnish on the top, and maybe some sprinkles of sugar that I have colored. And that's what I'll serve my family for Christmas dinner. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll have one more picture of the finished product.